Greetings, theists and non-theists. I'm the Atheist Paladin. Now, what inspired me to answer the 5 big questions to life? Because, you know, 5's a good number, right? And it was, I watch a lot of videos on Netflix. And I came across of a documentary because the nature of existence. You know, the way that it's visually designed, the cover, how it looks like it was going to be a very new agey sort of a thing, and I was going to watch that just to, I don't know, yell at it, I suppose. But I was pleasantly surprised. It was a very open-ended, very reasonable documentary. You know, this guy, of course, he has these questions to life, as we all do, and he actually interviews a whole gambit of it. He pretty much takes a very healthy sampling of just about every view that is almost out there. And he asks these questions to just about everyone. So he asks, Christians, Jewish rabbis, Buddhists, Confucianists, Taoists, Shintoists, just about every ist that there is out there. And then he also asks other atheists, and he asks several prominent and noteworthy atheists, and he also asks regular people. He has asked a kid across the street, and so he gets a very good idea of how everyone goes about answering these questions. He even asks scientists and philosophers. So, and I think he did a pretty good job. So if you want to know what inspired this, I think you ought to watch that original movie. And he's even making a so-called companion series, which is people expanding on the questions that he's already asked. So the first episode was 2 hours in itself. I don't know how many more episodes there are, but I'll probably intend on watching those too. So let's get to it. So the first question is, why do we exist? And I think the motivation behind this question actually leads to the second question. But most people go about answering why does the universe exist, right? And some people find this lacking and whatever, and because again the true notion is for the second question. But to ultimately answer it, I think we have good ideas of why does the universe exist. I think we have good theories on the Big Bang and everything. But ultimately, will we ever know? I can't ever say that. I think we might not, but I think we can always have a good idea. And it's always about the question of why is there something then rather than nothing. But I think I agree with Michael Shermer, is we can turn the question around, is why is nothing the default state? Why isn't something the default state? And Lauren Krauss's idea of it, is when we actualize the idea of nothing, then is that truly ever nothing? Because it's always something to some extent. So when we ask whether there's truly nothing, then it is, well, what presents nothing from ever becoming something? And if there is something to prevent it from becoming something, then isn't that something in and of itself? So to me, it's always, well, something is the default state. Something always seems to be. I don't think we can ever truly conceptualize nothing and then be able to answer that question. It always seems not to follow. So it comes to question 2. What is the purpose of life? And when people really ask that question, they really mean, what is the purpose of my life? And it's really whether if you go to something external and try to find that question, is it the purpose of life in religion? Is it the purpose of life in certain doctrines and worshiping God? or is it something that I have to find within? And to me, it's always something found within. Because even when you go to God and you go, hey God, what's my purpose to life? You, in a very much essence, have to agree with that. If you don't agree with that, well then you just simply find something else to give you meaning and purpose. And to me, purpose is a very inherently personal thing. It is something that is never that could be objectively found. And I think lots of people say, well, what's the objective meaning to life, or what's objectively moral? And they're trying to ground these things outside themselves, and I don't think you can. You can always have to agree with it within yourself before it has any true meaning. Question 3, what can we know? I think we can always, it always comes to this idea of, can we ever discover the capital T sort of truth? Can we always know, is this reality real, or are we a simulation? Can we know if there really is a God or an afterlife? Can we really know these things? Can we ever be assured of having any degree of certainty? And I don't think we can have absolute certainty, but I think we can have practical knowledge of the things that we interact with and that we experience with a very practical degree. And I think that the knowledge that we can have will always be practical, but never absolute. Is there a God or supernatural? Me being an atheist, the obvious answer is, of course, no. I don't believe in God or the supernatural, but I think people try to justify the existence of God and even, mystical things like the power of crystals and stuff in order to help give their life meaning and purpose. And I think that the God and supernatural are really just things to stick in the gaps of knowledge when we don't know something, when we find something to be a very good paradox or conundrum, and we just go, oh, God, the supernatural. We just stick that in, and there, the problem's solved. And I have problems with that, and I think that the difference between most atheists and most theists is whether or not they're comfortable saying, well, I don't know. But, I think you get that clip from, Thunderfoot's video speaking with Ray Comfort. Well, you don't know, well, then I know. It's just like, I think that's a very sad and unsophisticated way of looking at life, Is there life after death? And the answer doesn't necessarily follow that because I'm an atheist, I don't believe in these things. An atheist certainly can believe in life after death or reincarnation. But I don't think they even if those things were true, I think that sort of devalues life. If we take the look of reincarnation, you're always reliving your life. You're, living past mistakes, and the life that you live in now is part of the karma of that last life. So if your life sucks now, then you must have been a bad person in the previous life. And I think that's a very asinine view of taking a look at suffering in the world and still sort of blaming the person for it. But turning that back to the question of life, life after death. At what point do you break the cycle and just learn to live the life that you have now, and live it the best way you could? If you always have another life to make up for your mistakes, then at what point would you ever actually do that? And I think the best thing is always to live the life that you have now. Because we truly don't know if there actually is an afterlife or a heaven or hell. And so I think that brings an imperative about that then when they have to make this life the best life that we can have. If we don't know that there is heaven, then why don't we make this heaven? Why don't we bring heaven on earth? And try to do it around in a practical way, in a way that we can live with everybody. I mean, what better way to fulfill the tenets of your religion except bring it about heaven here? If you really truly believe something, why would you make somebody else's life a living hell? Why don't you make their life something better? Why don't we make other people's life something better and something worth living for? Because if you can't appreciate the finite, then why would you ever appreciate the infinite? Every time you exhausted away something, you got another thing for free, and another thing for free, again and again. And so why would you ever appreciate any individual thing when you have a near infinite supply of it? I think if you can appreciate the finite, then you can truly appreciate the infinite. So that's the sort of irony I found. People look forward to this infinite and glorious eternal life, and they throw the lives that they have now away. I just find that very sad. And I think if we just appreciate the life now, then why worry about the infinite? Why worry about that? You have lived your life to the fullest. And I find it very capricious for there to be a God who rather judge you on the person that you are, he judges you for what you believed. And I know Christian doctrine and to some extent, Islamic doctrine says that we're all, vile creatures, and it's really only the grace of God that we ever make it into heaven. But why is that the soul? Why is that such a important factor than, belief rather than doctrines? If I don't make it in based on my own merits, then that's fine. But to do it because I don't believe, that just strikes me as vain. And a truly enlightened God, and a truly infinite, all-knowing, he knows my feelings, he knows my thoughts, he knows every hair of my head. But he is so offended because I couldn't bring myself to believe, even at the threat of infinite punishment. And he can't understand that. Something doesn't square. Something does not square with me. So, those are the 5 answers. If you liked it, great on you. If you hated it, oh well. But that's my 5 answers, atheist answers the 5 biggest questions to life. And so peace, take care. I'd like to remind you, rationality is the path of righteousness. Bye-bye now.